Hey guys, welcome back. My name is Moretta from P&W Bettas, and this is going to be my care guide on how to take care of betta fish. In this video, I'm going to go in depth on both how to set up a betta tank and what you might need to buy if you're looking to get a fish for the first time, but I'm also going to talk about what you're going to need to do to maintain said tank. As you can tell by the name of my channel, I really like bettas. They're the fish that I keep the most out of any other tropical fish in this hobby, so I definitely have a lot of experience that goes behind the care information I'm going to share today. I have kept a lot of bettas, both as pets. I've also bred bettas multiple times, and I'm still breeding bettas, and I also import and sell. So let's get into these topics, and I hope you guys enjoy the video. So to make sure I don't forget anything in this video, I am going to be following a little bit of a reference, and this is actually a care guide that I wrote that you guys can check out on my website. The care guide that I have written there is going to be a little bit more simple and just kind of cover the basics when it comes to setting up a tank, but this video is going to go more in depth, so I highly recommend watching this over just reading the care guide if you want some more information, but it's a good place to start, and it's something that I provide for customers who are looking at maybe getting a fish on my website. The topics we're going to cover in this video are going to be tank size, temperature and heating, filtration, decor and substrate, diet and tank mates, as well as tank maintenance and a little bit of a touch on the nitrogen cycle and cycling your aquariums. So the first topic we're going to start with is tank size. Now tank size is definitely something a lot of people have different opinions on, so this of course is just my opinion on tank size, and it might differ from other people's, but that's okay. So generally what I'm going to recommend for betta fish is going to be a 5 to 10 gallon aquarium. Now 5 to 10 gallons is a really good starting point because number one, it's going to give your fish room to swim around the tank, but it's also, most importantly, going to help you maintain water quality. If you are newer in the fish keeping hobby or new to bettas, I'm probably going to recommend closer to the 10 gallon tank size. Now there's two really important reasons for that. Number one is going to be the cost, and number two is going to be maintenance and ease of keeping that aquarium. When it comes to cost, there's a lot of really great 5-gallon kits that come with a tank and a light and maybe a filter, possibly even a heater, but they tend to be pretty expensive for at least the size of the tank that you're getting. And I actually find that 10-gallon kits can be as cheap or cheaper than 5-gallon kits, and a standalone Aqueon 10-gallon you can get for as little as $10 during the Petco 50% off sales. A big reason why people want to choose bettas in this hobby is because they think they can go into these little bowls, and that looks really appealing to people because it's like, oh, I can get this fish, the fish is pretty affordable, I can get this really affordable bowl. But as we know, keeping fish in bowls, not recommended, isn't going to be the best environment for them. So I want to still recommend things that are going to be on the affordable side while still being able to properly care for your fish. Now when it comes to ease of maintenance, larger tanks are always going to be easier to maintain the water quality. Having a larger aquarium is going to be easier to maintain because you're not going to have to do water changes quite as often, but it's also going to give you more room for mistakes. So that's also why I recommend a 10-gallon for beginners. But the other thing I really want to emphasize with tank size is it's not a one-size-fits-all scenario. Now, unlike a lot of other fish in this hobby, like your neon tetras or your honey grommies, there's a lot of variation in domesticated betta splendens. Now, over the time these fish have been domesticated, we have created more and more tail types and colorations and variation within the fish. Now, specifically when it comes to tail types, there are going to be placats, so these are going to be short-finned fish, and there's going to be long fins, which could be veil tails, crown tails, half moons, all different types. And the mobility of a placat, a fish with short fins, is going to be different than a fish with long fins. So that is a consideration if you're looking at a long-finned fish. They are going to have more finnage to carry around with them, and it is going to be a lot heavier. And so maybe a smaller aquarium or just an aquarium that has more places for them to rest is going to be better suited for them. So like I said, just because I recommend a 5 to 10 gallon, it doesn't mean that every fish is going to thrive in that environment. There are some fish that I found do better in maybe a longer, shallower 3-gallon. And that goes the other way as well. Maybe a 5 to 10 gallon is too small for some bettas. And that's something I definitely find with giant or king bettas that are becoming more popular. You can find them at places like Petco now, but they have a lot of energy and they're quite large and they definitely like more space. So if you're going with a giant betta, that's something where I would recommend between 10 and 20 gallons. Our next topic, we're going to be talking about heating and temperature. Now, it's another really common myth that betta fish don't need heaters, and this is a really unfortunate thing because they are tropical fish. Now, it's kind of a given that if you have a tropical fish, you're probably going to want to keep them at tropical temperatures, and the best way to do this for most people is going to be an aquarium heater. There are two big questions I commonly get asked when it comes to using heaters, and that first question is going to be, well, I live in a really warm area, do I still need a heater? The answer to that question is it depends on the temperature of your tank with and without a heater. Even if you live in a really warm location, if the temperature in your tank isn't going to stay between 78 and 82 degrees, At night and during the winter, yes, you are going to need a heater. But if you live somewhere else where it stays warm year-round, and if you check the temperature of your tank without a heater and it's within that range, I would say you're okay not using one, but you're still going to want a thermometer to be able to check that temperature. Now, the other question I get asked with heaters is people who are worried about overheating their fish when using them. Now, the good thing about this is that heaters come with internal thermostats. That means that when the heater detects a temperature that is above what they are set to heat to, it will automatically turn off and not heat the water warmer than that. There are unfortunately some heaters that don't have internal thermostats, although they are less common. Basically, the way to find out if your heater has an internal thermostat is going to be one of two things. It's either going to say preset to a certain temperature, as in it's not adjustable, it will just keep the water at that temperature, or it'll be an adjustable heater where you choose the temperature you want it to heat to, and it will auto shut off when it gets above that temperature. Now, when it comes to what size heater, that really just depends on what size tank. But in general, when shopping for a heater, just look at the size tank that it's rated for. For your average 5 to 10 gallon, I generally use around a 50 watt heater. Now let's talk filtration. Do you need a filter in your Betta Fish's tank? Now, my answer to this may surprise you, but my answer is technically no, you don't need a filter. But let's talk about why you probably should have one and what the filters actually do. Now, filtration in aquariums are going to achieve two things. Number one, water movement and surface agitation, and number two, they are going to help maintain a cycle. Now, the reason why bettas don't technically need a filter is bettas don't need high dissolved oxygen in the water. So having surface agitation isn't really a necessity. Now, bettas are what we call labyrinth fish. So this means that along with getting oxygen through their gills, they're also getting oxygen by taking gulps of air off the surface. Now, when it comes to cycling, a filter is going to be really helpful for cycling and maintaining a tank's cycle. When you have a filter running, you're going to have surface agitation and water moving through the filter, which is going to have a higher level of dissolved oxygen. And nitrifying bacteria can colonize in larger amounts in areas with more dissolved oxygen. And along with the water movement across the tank, it's going to reduce biofilm on the surface, and it's also going to help move the heat from your heater around the aquarium. So for most cases, yes, I'm going to say you really should get a filter for your Betta Fish tank. There are some exceptions where you might not do that, for example, some different Wallstad methods, but for most people, having a filter is going to be the best way to maintain your aquarium. Now, when it comes to bettas, and especially those longer fin bettas, having a filter with low flow is going to be really important. Bettas are not like tetras. They don't love swimming against the flow of currents. It actually can be quite stressful for them, so you really don't want to ever see your fish struggling against the current produced by your filter. So for me, I find the best way to handle this is just by using sponge filters. They're going to have high levels of surface agitation, but they're going to have generally pretty low water movement within the area that your fish is swimming. And they're generally really affordable and really easy to set up. Now, sponge filters can be tricky to find if you only have access to larger box stores like Petco and PetSmart, so using a hang on the back or internal filter is another great option. And if you are finding that the flow is too high, you can always research and watch some videos on how to make a DIY baffle for the filter, which basically is going to redirect the water flow and basically not have it be pushing your fish around so much. Our next topic is going to be substrate and decor. Now, when it comes to choosing the substrate and the decor that you're going to put in your tank, I'm always going to recommend a more naturalistic style, so live plants, real rocks, real wood. I just find that I prefer the look of a more naturalistic tank, but I also think it more mimics the natural environment of any type of fish that you're going to keep. A couple things to keep in mind when choosing your substrate: it's going to be easiest to use a sand or small or medium-sized gravel rather than larger rocks. Sometimes really large pebble-style rocks can be kind of tricky because food and or waste can kind of get stuck underneath them, and it can be really hard to remove. Most gravels and sands are going to be very fine options, and really it just comes down to what you like the look of for your tank. When it comes to choosing rocks and wood, there are things that you can collect naturally, and there are methods of sanitizing those to make them safe for tanks. But for an easy method, anything that you're going to buy at an aquarium shop that is sold for use in fish tanks when it comes to rocks and wood are generally going to be safe for bettas. If you have a longer finned betta, the other thing to keep in mind is anything that could snag or rip its fins. A lot of times people say that plastic plants as a whole are completely unsafe for bettas. That's not necessarily true. It's just that some plastic plants can be pretty pokey. You just want to run your hands over anything and check to make sure it wouldn't snag the very delicate fins of a betta fish. If you're going the route of artificial plants or artificial decor and you don't want to have to worry about checking any of your plastic plants, you can always go with silk plants. Those are going to be softer and not have any problems with ripping fins or any type of damage. When it comes to plants, I definitely recommend real plants because number one, they look cool, but more importantly, they also have benefits when it comes to water quality because your plants are going to be absorbing Things like ammonia, yes, but more importantly, lots of nitrate. Nitrate is something that you remove through water changes, and so having a more densely planted tank is going to help reduce water changes and maintenance and just keep your water in your tank a little bit cleaner. One place that I've had a really great experience ordering plants from in the past couple of years has been H2O Plants, and I actually have an affiliate link with them now, which is super exciting. So if you want to check them out, I do have a discount code. That code and the affiliate link will be in my description. The reason I really like H2O Plants is because they have a really big selection and they're also really affordable. But the thing that also I think sets them apart is how they ship their plants. I have always gotten my plants in really good condition. They'll ship with heat packs and insulation in the wintertime, and I've just had a really great experience ordering from in the past. Our next topic is going to be talking about the diet, what you're going to want to feed your betta. Now, there are a lot of commercial fish foods available for bettas, like pellets and or flakes. And this isn't necessarily bad, but I'm going to go a little bit more in depth as to why maybe adding some variety to your diet is really going to benefit your fish. Now, bettas are carnivores, so they do need a lot of meat and high protein in their diets. Now, a lot of the times pellets and flakes can be a bit tricky because a lot of the ones sold for bettas are lacking in protein and quality ingredients. So when looking for pellets, you're going to want to look for ingredients that are meat and not fillers, like fish meal, and you're also going to want to look for a high protein content. Generally, I say 40% or higher. But a great alternative to just feeding pellets is going to be feeding things like frozen and possibly live foods. This may sound intimidating at first, especially if you're just getting into the hobby, but there are some really great options for frozen food that you can buy even at chain pet stores like Petco and PetSmart. The main things I'm going to recommend for bettas are going to be bloodworms, brine shrimp, mysis shrimp, or daphnia. The two main ones I feed the most are going to definitely be brine shrimp and bloodworms. My favorite brand for frozen food is 100% going to be Hikari, but I also really do like Omega-1. And while Hikari isn't sold at chain stores, Omega-1 generally is. Omega-1 also comes with a really great carnivore variety pack, which comes with individual cubes that have bloodworms, brine shrimp, and mysis shrimp all together. So you can buy one pack and it's going to come with a mix of all of those things, so you don't have to buy 3 individual packs of frozen food. The other thing you can look into is adding live foods to your betta fish's diet. And I know this can sound really intimidating, but it has a lot of other benefits than just the health, because it also can provide a lot of enrichment. Some great options for live foods include live blackworms, live brine shrimp, live daphnia, and live flightless fruit flies. Now, if you're going to be looking for some of these things, daphnia, brine shrimp, and blackworms are probably going to be found most often at local fish stores if yours carry them. But you can find live flightless fruit flies at chain pet stores if that is all you have access to. The main takeaway that I want to give when it comes to diet is just going to be high protein, good quality ingredients, and variety. There isn't one food that I feed my bettas every single day all the time. I'm constantly switching it up, doing different foods, and giving them a variety within their diet. Our next topic is going to be tank mates. Now, these are the big questions. Can you keep bettas with other bettas? And can you keep bettas with other fish? The answer to the first question is going to be no. Do not keep bettas with other bettas. There are a couple exceptions like sorority tanks. I have made videos about my sororities in the past, and I can make more videos about sorority tanks in the future and my long-term experience with them. But when it comes to somebody who is just keeping one betta, a male or a female, you're just going to want to stick with that one betta in the tank. There are some ways in which you can do divided tanks, which you can have one larger tank that's divided into individual sections for each fish. Divided tanks are a great way to keep bettas in the same tank, both safely and separately, and I've actually made a video sharing how I've made DIY tank dividers in the past. So if you want to check that out, I'll leave a little tag for that video. But if you are choosing a divided tank, keep in mind it needs to be opaque and you don't want your fish being able to see each other. Now, when it comes to can you keep bettas with other fish, this is going to depend on 2 things. Number 1, the size of your betta's tank, and 2, the personality of your betta. I would recommend at least a 10-gallon if you're going to look at tank mates, just because there aren't a lot of fish that can go in tanks smaller than 10 gallons, and bettas are aggressive, and it's best to just have more space when it comes to having multiple fish in one tank. Now, the other thing to consider is going to be your betta's personality. Bettas are really unique in the fact that they have many different personalities between individual fish, but it can be a little bit tricky because some fish are going to be much more aggressive than others. Some may be fine with tank mates, while others would hunt down and kill everything in their tank if they could. The best way to go about considering tank mates is number 1, going to be putting those tank mates in the tank first before you get your betta, and number 2, floating your betta in the tank, watching their behavior, seeing if they're flaring, if they look like they're going to go after those fish, and then of course watching your fish really carefully after they're added to the tank, and just have a backup if something doesn't end up working out. Our next topic is going to be tank maintenance. How do you take care of the tank that you have set up for your betta, you have it all prepared, and you have your fish? Now what do you need to do to keep your fish healthy? Now, along with feeding your fish, you are going to have to do regular water changes. The fish is obviously producing waste, which is going to build up in the aquarium, and the things that are produced through the waste are eventually going to need to be removed and replaced with clean water. It is a huge misconception that cleaning an aquarium is going to involve dumping all of the water out, rinsing all of the substrate off under tap water, rinsing off all the pieces of decor, and then setting it completely back up with clean water. That is definitely not what you want to do to clean your fish's tank. What that's going to do is kill off all of the beneficial bacteria that is keeping your tank healthy. I will talk a little bit more about that topic when we get into the nitrogen cycle, but just keep that in mind when we're doing tank maintenance, as we want to preserve our beneficial bacteria while still giving our fish clean water. Really, the only thing you need to do when it comes to maintaining the fish's tank is removing water and then adding clean water back. There are many different commercial water change systems you can buy, from very basic siphons to more expensive systems like the Python, or you can keep it really simple by just scooping the water out. That also works. Or if you're wanting a really simple siphon, you can just get some vinyl tubing from the hardware store. You basically just need to remove some of that dirty water and then mix up some clean water with some dechlorinator and then add that back to your aquarium. When it comes to how often you should be cleaning your tank, I generally recommend 50% of the water be changed weekly, although this is really going to depend on how big your tank is, what you have in your tank, how many plants. There's a lot of different factors that can impact how often you're going to need to change your water. But if you're worried about it, having more water changes than less water changes is going to be better. And I find 50% weekly is a really good number to fall back on, because it's really easy to do. It's once a week, it's not very often, and it's generally going to be a really good amount for your fish as well for most 5 to 10 gallon aquariums. Now, this last topic is going to be a little bit more complicated, but it's also going to be one of the most important things we're going to talk about, and that is going to be tank cycling and the nitrogen cycle. Now, the nitrogen cycle is going to be a process where nitrifying bacteria, also called beneficial bacteria, is going to process the waste produced by your fish. This process is going to start with ammonia, that is what is released from excess fish food, as well as your fish's poop. One type of nitrifying bacteria is going to take that, use the ammonia, and turn it into nitrite. Now, another type of beneficial bacteria is then going to take that nitrite and then use it and turn it into nitrate. Now, why is this important for our fish? Why do we care? Well, the reason behind this is because ammonia and nitrite are very toxic to our aquarium inhabitants, whereas nitrate is far less toxic and tolerable to the fish in much higher amounts. So it's really important that we make sure that we have this colony of bacteria within our aquarium to be able to cycle that ammonia all the way to nitrate. And like we talked about before, water changes are going to be really important, because they are then going to remove that excess nitrate, prevent it from building up, and keep your aquarium water healthy. Now, I'm not going to go in depth in this video on how to cycle an aquarium, because I think that's kind of best suited for its own video and its own kind of topic, but I will say that it's really important to do your research on how to cycle aquariums and how to know when your aquarium is cycled. I am going to leave a couple of resources that are also linked to my Betta Care guide in the description of this video that I recommend you read. Are really great resources to start learning about these topics. The biggest takeaway I want you to have when it comes to cycling aquariums is, number one, you need to do it, and number two, it is not as simple as setting up your tank, waiting 24, 48 hours, or even 7 days, and then adding fish. There are some other steps that you are going to need to take before adding fish. That is not just letting your tank run with the filter on. I just want to reiterate, because I think it's super important that people understand the importance of cycling your aquarium. You have to make sure that you research how to cycle aquariums and go through that process before you get your fish, because otherwise there's going to be nothing in your tank to control the waste produced by your fish, and it's basically just going to be living in a tank full of its own waste, which is not healthy for your animal. So definitely check out those resources. I will work on possibly making a more in-depth video talking about tank cycling, as well as a little bit more in-depth on the nitrogen cycle in the future. But for now, I'll leave those resources for you guys to check out. And that's going to bring us to the end of our care guide, talking about how to set up and maintain a betta fish aquarium. I hope you guys were able to get some good information from this, whether or not you have a betta fish now and you're looking to improve your care, or maybe you're looking to get one in the future. I really hope you were able to get a better understanding of what it takes to take care of these fish and maintain their aquariums. I really enjoy keeping these fish. I think they're really fun, and I think a lot of other people also get a lot of joy out of keeping them. So I hope this helps you be able to do that. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.